Alright, I guess I'm going to work over here now. Okay, S&S puts the crank together really good. They tighten the hell out of the nuts like they're supposed to. They put Loctite on it like they're supposed to. And they true the damn things up really, really nice. So they do a damn good job of that. Now when they come to fitting their rods, they suck. They're usually not very round, not sized correctly, and all of that. The rods are usually straight though, which is a plus. So their crank pins are so-so for being straight, round, and true. Their finishes are rough, but they'll work. But I always rebuild rods because I've had a few failures when I didn't rebuild them because customers said don't do it. And other shops said don't do it, and the motors would fail. So I never will do it anymore. I told them they can go screw themselves. They only put together, I'm taking the crank apart. Otherwise they can do it themselves. So that's how I eliminate my problems. So to take this apart, you take apart the left flywheel, and then the rod will slip off and you keep everything else assembled, unless you have to take it apart further. Now these are externally balanced from S&S because the holes are on the outside. Back in the old days they did it statically and the holes are on the inside. So all of those balancing tools they sell you in their catalog, they don't use that shit anymore. They quit using that stuff a long time ago. They do everything externally balanced with an automotive style balancer now. Don't lose that washer. Very important. So there you go. I still like statically balanced. I screw that balance the other way. I don't like it. But that's options. Lots of different ways of doing things. Pick the way you like and go with it. Okay. This should be pretty damn tight. Should give my air impact a good workout. I usually tighten this nut to about 450. That's 450 foot-pounds with Loctite. They do too. They tighten them up. Nice and snug. So you can see the Loctite on nut. Nut's warmed up. You can see the Loctite on the shaft down there. See all that white stuff right there? That's called Loctite. Now they use sleeve retainer Loctite on their nuts. I use red. They don't need to be sleeve retained, but that's how they do it. So anyway, it's on there pretty good. Now we gotta see if we can pop the flywheel off the taper. We'll hit it with a nice steel hammer right here flat. If you hit it flat, it doesn't nick things up. I'll use my 2.5, 3 pounder, whatever this is. Big one, I think it's 3. So anyway, you hit it flat, it doesn't ease you down. If this doesn't pop it, then I gotta put in a press on it. See, it doesn't want to come off. So pretty good. This one's not popping. That's as hard as I want to hit it because that's going to nick it, being that hard. So I have to use a hydraulic press to pop this. So a little bit more work. Alright. Camera one hand, cranking the other. That's not heavy, is it? And of course the tripod grabs a hold of shit on the way over. Alright. See how strong can you hold it with one hand? Okay, so you put the flywheels flat. On the parallel blocks here, and you push a little pressure right here. Like this. It doesn't fit. I'll use this one. Still doesn't want to pop, as you can tell. ton of pressure on it, so I'm going to hit this on there now. It still isn't popping it. It's on there pretty good. This one still isn't popping. This one's being stubborn. He popped it that time. That's called being very aggressive. Keep stepping the pressure up until it decides to come apart. Still stuck on there pretty good. There we go. So you can see the Loctite on the tapers. Alright. So we're going to have to pull that crank pin out because of you see how much I was flexing the whole thing over trying to get it out, so I'll take it apart and retorque it. So anyway, that's Loctite for you. Even though there's no nut, it's on there. The sleeve retainer does its job. You can see all the Loctite on the taper and the nut right there. See all the goop on there? That's how you know it's well Loctited. Alright, and you also notice how it doesn't go all the way down the whole taper because you don't want it in the bearing area. Alright, that was definitely on there pretty snugly, which is usually how they are, because that's what the cranks get nice and tight like they're supposed to be. So that's a good way of doing it. Alright, there's the other half. I'm going to clean these bearings out, so I'm going to get something to put them in. Okay, so we get our clean basket here. So you can see they use grease to assemble this stuff. They're all full of grease. There goes one of the bearings. Now these are the bearings that like to fall out. It's definitely full of heavy grease. I do not like these style bearings at all. Okay, here's the kit they come out of. It's an XL kit though. Yeah. Don't know about that. For now it'll have to do. Okay, one of the rollers fell out. A whole bunch of rollers are falling out now. These rollers are a pain in the ass to put in. I don't like using grease because it doesn't dissipate always in the oil galleries and the pump. Some greases do not play friendly with motor oil. Damn it. Since when do these things go all the way through? There we go. Alright. So much being a Sportster when it's a big twin one. Get rid of that marking. Okay, so I'm going to clean these off in solvent and get all this grease off. I don't use grease, I use assembly oil. And you can see what the grease looks like all over the crank pin here. So that this stuff doesn't always dissipate and go away. So that could be a bad thing. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take this apart, clean all this grease off, scrub these down a little bit with with a scrub pad, probably a green pad. Get all this grease off everything, and then I can measure stuff and see where we're at. So I'll take this nut off, I'll put this in a hydraulic press and just push the crank pin straight down. It'll come out like a shotgun when it pops. So I don't feel like spending the time to make a video doing that, so you just have to watch some other job I've already done that on. It's not going to be this one. Alright, we'll be back with the stuff all cleaned up. Alright, we got everything all cleaned up and apart. I got interrupted for an hour or so, so now it's 10 o'clock now. And I want to go home, so screw it. Okay, so here's what the rods look like. I need to check to see if these are straight. And we need to make sure that they're round and sized correctly. So I haven't set my gauge here yet, but it's going to be semi-close. You always have to recenter it. Okay, there's a typical S&S quality workmanship. So we're 6/10 under and 1/10 over. So that's 7/8 out around on a brand new unused rod. That's about their quality. Sucks. So how do you have 8 to 9/10 clearance when you got 8/10 out around? I want to know how you do that. So anyway, so that pretty well is trash. Typical S&S. So now you know why I take these motors apart. Okay, that one's at 3. That's 4/10 under. Oh, that one's only 4/10 out. That's pretty close. So what I'm doing, I'm rotating the rod like this. See, that's 0. Oh, now see, this one's good. Yeah, that's about a tenth, and that's about a 1/10 out around. Whoop, going like this. Yeah, that's maybe a 1/10. Yeah, that one. This is a good rod here. That side. This other side over here is half under and 4 up, 1 down. This side over here was 1 up, 1 down. Okay, so we got the same low, but we got 2 different highs. So 1/2 of the rod's not too bad, the other half sucks. That's great. So this has to be honed and fitted. Now this one here was not the same size, as you can tell by the bearing. Oh, nope, it's the low number's about the same, about 1/10 lower than the other one. Yeah, so this side, see, this side of the rod's a lot better than the other half of the rod. See, that side's only 3/10 out. This side was 7/8 out. Come on, dumbass. There we go. Trying to do it the other one here. See, this same rod. So there you go. You go up that and you go down there. Yeah. So 1/2 the rod is junk, the other half is straight. So there's a big eyebrow in here someplace. So if you look at how it's machined, you might be able to actually see it. Now when I hone it with my real fine stone, which is a lot finer than this, you'll see where it's bad. There'll be a big eyebrow, which is where it's big low spot like this will be in there at some point. So whoever honed that rod didn't do a very good job. Either one of them. Okay, now these things here are supposed to be round and true. Now we didn't measure that yet either. Let's see here. So let's see how round the crank pins are. Now usually what they do is they put the good parts on the motors they build, and the parts they sell they put the crap with. And if you buy replacement parts where you just need a crank pin by itself, that's when you get the worst ones. They give you all the rejects. Okay, so this one here is about 1 thou under on that, 1 under. Okay, so there's a couple tenths there, which for them that's pretty good quality, but yeah, it's a little bit more than a couple tenths there. Let's see, that is 7 or 8 tenths under. It's kind of in the middle. You rotate it around and it's 8 tenths. 9 there. Nine again. Okay, well, actually reading the gauge are not too bad. 8. Alright, well that looks a lot better. So we had about a 1/10 and a half variable in this thing, which is, for them, that's not too bad. 1/10 and a half I can live with. It's way the hell undersized though. So that's one. We were 7 8/10 under, but we were a full thou under, so it's 1.2, 1.3 thousandths undersize. This was at 0 to under, so if you go 0, that's 1.3 clearance. And when it closed up that 7/10, we dropped to about 6/10 clearance on the tightest spot, but then it got really loose in the one spot. Everything else is just way loose. Assuming the bearings are standard. Now we don't know what the bearings are because it comes in that kit, which are right here. I got them all cleaned up, but I got to measure them. So here's all the rollers all clean. So now we got to measure the roller. Now if I do this just right, I can catch the edge without dropping on the ground. And the rollers are way undersized too. Great. Yeah, they're at least 2/10 under. Let's see here. Oh, I can't see what you're looking at, but it's about 1. It's 1/10. Standard would be 5/10. Yeah, that one's almost 0. It's 1/10. So this is 1/10. So it's 4/10 per side, and that's 8 more tenths. So the numbers are really stacking up as being extremely loose. So we have an extra thousandths of clearance in this rod sitting where it should be. So, because the rod on the large part of the hole is standard, 1/10 under, which we'll call it standard. The crank pin's 1.2 to 1.3 under. The bearings are 4/10 per roller. That's 8/10 on the diameter. So you add 8 to your 1.2. That makes you 2 full thou undersize. So that puts you about 1/8 to 2 thousandths clearance. You're supposed to be 9/10. If you round it to 1, call it 1 and 2. They're 1 thou off. Of course, they're out of round by 3/4 of a thou in one part, half a thou and everything else, at least. So, there you go. We got 2 options. We need new bearings or a new crank pin. And even with the 1 thou over crank pin, we're going to be pushing on making that rod set clean up for what we need with these way undersized rollers. So, probably the better thing is to do a different bearing kit. But, we'll see. All I know is what we got right now don't work. So more than likely I'll probably change out the bearings to something I can work with. Because we need a lot bigger. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll do the crank pin. Who knows? We'll see. Crank pins are probably $120 from S&S, if not more. Gems are probably about 110 nowadays. Roller kit with cages is probably about $75-80 these days. So this is a cheaper option. So, and I got tolerance because I can go up to 1 over bearings then. I can fix anything at that point. And if I go to different bearings, I'll get more rollers also, which is a plus. So I get more bearing area. So I always like doing the bearings. So I'll probably want to change the bearings out in cages. We'll do that method. But anyway, it's a nice precision part. Typical S&S. I wonder what the crank pin is. Or not the crank pin, I mean the wrist pin bushings are. So here's the wrist pin bushings out of their new pistons. Those are actually fitted nicely. Nice performance fit. See, no drag. You go like this, you can feel a little bit of clearance, but not much. That's good. So that means they probably got 1 to 1.2 clearance. Nice race fit. So, anyway, that's it for tonight.